Hello, my name is Raquel. I go by Raquel the Bee across the internets, and welcome to another art video. So we're just getting right into it, and I started out this painting, which is going to be in watercolors, using a blue ink not roller ball. It's like a ballpoint pen. It has a little crick in it because it's meant for lefties because I am left-handed. And I start out my sketches very light. And also in the blue ink, I see and notice that in blue ink, it tends to disappear when the colors are on top. After I finished the sketch, I was like, it needs more, and I want to do something like fun. So I decided to add fairies. This is me planning and designing and drawing at the same time, which I usually don't recommend because then you're trying to make choices while rendering. So usually I would like to do, if I'm doing a character, design the character first, then put them into the illustration. So then I only have to decide about proportions and stuff. I don't want to decide about the proportions while I'm trying to render them inside the page. It's a whole thing. It's like you don't want to design while you're drafting. Well, it's just easier for me to break it down that way. So I'm kind of making it up as I go. And I'm like, what's a fairy? Get some legs in there. This one's sitting crisscross applesauce. Adding some of the wings. I didn't even decide on the wing type. I was like, let's do some generic wisps. Add the ear and then make sure there's hair and that there is some kind of illusion to form with illusion to form so that you can just interpret it by looking at it. It's not perfect anatomy by any means. And having her sit there, and I was like, well, I need another one. So I have this fairy who's championing, standing on top of the other end for like, haha, kind of like how you would imagine like someone standing off like the rigging of a sail ship or something like that. I wanted more energy. I wanted a contrast in the figures. So the one that was just sitting down, it had a little bit of energy, like her knees were up and she was holding her feet like an excited kid. And then this one's even more like excited kid energy, swinging from like a jungle gym, but the energy is not grounded so far down. And, you know, I added the line of action and I'm trying to get just the mannequins in here. These are usually when I draw people, I do a baseline of action, get the head form in there, get the body form in there, and try to figure out the legs. And I'm kind of fighting for my life on this one with the leg. And I'm pressing lightly and then eventually pressing harder so that I can clarify what goes where. Because after a while, it kind of gets messed up. And that's what happens when you don't. This is why I usually sketch and then, you know, draw the illustration afterward. So I can determine composition, position, you know, forms and all of that. But I'm doing it at once. So that's why it's messy. But it's getting there. And this is not going to be the final illustration. I'll most likely end up doing this again, but on a 9x12 or even most likely I'm trying to remember the dimensions. I think it's like an 8x6. Oh, it's like 5x8 is the standard for book illustrations for chapter books. So I'll probably do it in those proportions on a piece of paper. And that last fairy up top there, right there, where I'm painting in the gray, she's too big. Again, that's what happens when I don't plan. This is just off the cuff, and this is in my sketchbook, and I had the idea and I wanted to get it down. So it's kind of like practice, but I mean, mixing all of my different modes of how I make art together. So that's why it's kind of convoluted. Now I have been adding a gray wash to the background because in my mind, I imagine that this is going to be a pretty dark, like in the forest where there's not a lot of sunlight kind of environment. And then I want to make it so that the lantern fruit actually look like they are glowing from within. So within. So I'm adding the gray background just to darken everything up and get me an overall picture of what's going to happen, and painting around the forms and the shapes. So it gives me a clear idea of the composition and subjects within the page because they will be pushed forward since they're no longer going to be in the gray. And I ended up mixing a thinner wash, something like, I think it was all the colors in the pan. That's usually how I start out with watercolors. Whatever's left over in my palette, I mix it all together and it desaturates itself. Then I use that as the first layers of wash so that I can knock out the whites of the paper I'm not trying to preserve. And I also really don't care if this is flat and even, because the background is going to be like flora, or like it's going to be like plants and stuff or bushes. So the unevenness will just add and lend to the textures, and it doesn't have to be perfectly flat. And again, this fairy is just so big. I didn't mean to. And I was, oh, yep, there it is. There is the image of my pan. I literally added water and mixed all the colors that were there previously so that they would turn into gray. And I'm thinking I might just make that, paint over that big fairy with gouache and make it smaller. Now, I was about to add color and then couldn't make up my mind on what colors to do. So I started doing color swatches, or color like vignettes. I don't know what the word is. Color tests. Seeing what colors I could get in their vibrancy, which is the colors up top. And then for the color tests, I made small little doodles of the major elements of the given image. So I don't have to redraw the image perfectly, but I just want to know how they work together. So all the lantern all of the lantern fruit are going to be a similar color, maybe a little bit of variation. All of the berries are going to be a similar color, a little bit of variation. Stems, fairy, and then the fairies themselves are going to have the same or similar anatomy. So it was really down to me doing a couple of sketches so that I could see the color, like color comps, I guess is what they also are called, together. And first I'm starting out with a yellow, because that's how I would make these lantern fruit bright, is giving them a bright yellow underpainting. And then adding color back. In here, it's wet on dry, and now I'm going in, and this is an opera pink, but it's mixing on the page to make orange, and it's mottled. And that's the difference between mixing in the pan versus on the page, because it's a little bit uneven. And kind of patchy, which is kind of what I want for that texture. And then I'm going to go in and I'm strengthening it up with like color charges. The pools of pigment is what I call a charge personally. So it looks like it's charging for it. And then I switched the reds, because in my palette I have two reds. One is I call them reds, but one is opera pink, which is a very vibrant neon pink that is not light fast. And then I have like some form of I have some form of crimson. I'm not sure what the name is. And you could see by the time I pulled up the crimson that it started to dry on that bottom quadrant one. That's why there's some harsh lines. And now I'm going in with the stems. I was pretty sure I'm not going to change the color of the stems, so I kind of didn't actually experiment with that. But I did experiment with the color of the fairies. Like, do I want them to be blue, brown, pink, green? And the color comps can help you see what's more appeasing. And now I'm going in and playing around with the background just to replicate what I wanted to do. And you can better see the difference in the two quote unquote red hues or pinkish hues, because the top one, the opera pink, I also did it with the berries, the top row, versus the bottom row, which is with the crimson. You can see there's a bit of difference there in their colors. And I prefer the crimson because it just goes for the colors I want them to go for in my mind. And then after I had decided on which one I wanted to do, I wanted to explore just a little bit more the tonality and colors for the fairy. And once again, I am drawing a simplified version of the key factors I'm trying to test. So I'm not redrawing the fairies in hyper detail. I'm like, I need arms, hair, wings, legs, body, head kind of thing. So I do a simplified doodle so I can do the color comps and get an idea and a visual. And this is why it's a color comp, because the exact expression that I'm trying to figure out is the interplay of colors between each other and not necessarily the design itself. Like I just want to know what the local colors are going to be so that I can understand and make a definitive choice when adding them to a composition. So I'm not trying to figure that out on the page actively in the image and illustration of the final image. So this is why I plan out things. There are some things that I don't need to plan out, like the stems. I knew they're going to be brown, so I didn't have to do color swatches about that. But these fairies I did. So I went through, and as you can see here, there's a lighter brown, there's a lighter, cooler brown, a warmer brown, and one that's like the right one is more pink. I don't like it either. I like the first thought, best thought, which is the second one, which is a deeper brown with the brighter orange. And you see me going here in a second layer with the pigments just to see or show how to get the texture. All right, and that's the end of the video. That's as far as I got. Stay tuned for more parts so I can finish this illustration. I appreciate y'all watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Have a good day. Bye!